it's Bonnie Southgate, hEDS Rehab on my Reformer, bringing you another exercise. So today I thought I would give you an exercise. It is a hip extension exercise, and I think sometimes people fear giving this to somebody who's hypermobile, but often people with hypermobility can get extremely tight in what we call the TFL and the hip flexors in the front, particularly if they have a lordotic spine. So I'm going to show you a couple of different versions of this again. So somebody who maybe isn't comfortable kneeling might want to do it differently than somebody whose knees are okay. So I'm going to just start off with a really simple version. These are all brought back from the original Pilates exercises. These aren't his original exercises, but they're brought back just to keep them a little bit safer, and so we do progressions like everything else. So starting kneeling. Now I've got this again on 1.5 springs. So you have to decide again whether it's a realistic weight for pushing away. If it's too light, then actually controlling the hip can be really difficult. So you need enough weight in this exercise. I always used to worry more that I was going to fall through than get a hip stretch. So this can be used for control, or this can be used as a stretch. It really depends on your own body. So some people will be tight, and some people will find that actually this is all about controlling the hip from not just falling into it. So I'm going to take 1 foot behind. I'm going to take my socks off so you can see my feet on the headrest easier. So I have toes tucked under. I'm going to have 1 foot there, and I'm going to take the other foot. Now, the original, the foot was up on the bar, and most of the people with hypermobility can probably do that. But actually, for the pelvis, I prefer to start it down here, and then I can focus a little bit more on what I'm doing. So I'm thinking about lining my foot up with my knee, and again my back foot, I'm trying not to let it collapse in, so I'm not pronating. I want everything lined up. I want to think that my back leg, my big toe is down. And we're going to start this by pushing the back leg away just a little bit. And when we do, I want some activation of the bottom muscles, because you can just shear the femur forward. We do not want to do that. So I think about the leg that's pushing back, my bone that I sit on narrowing, and what I should feel is that I get a bit of activation where I say my leg shakes hands with my bottom. So from there, I'm going to use that actively to push away, and I can just not control it, and I could fall into a big position, but I'm actually working on activating there, and I'm only going to take it to a point where I feel I can keep that activation going, and then I'm going to come back in. So I want little tick boxes for people with hypermobility. You're thinking about the elbows not hyperextending, not over externally rotating, not overly internally, midway, diagonally forward, hands not on the fingertips, not over flexing the wrist over enough. So you're taking care of the wrists, the elbows, and the shoulders. Head's not down here, not down there. So lengthening, getting that, just holding that position could be hard work in itself. Narrowing the sit bone, trying to activate that, and just pushing away. And then coming back in. And then pushing away. And so there is a lot of teaching of fixing the hips in Pilates, and I hope I don't upset any Pilates teachers in saying this, but anatomically, the way that our bodies work, each bone takes another bone into an action. So actually when we do go into hip extension and we take it to a certain range, the natural progression for the hip would be a bit of external rotation. And in external rotation, you'll get a little rotation of the pelvis. So when we walk, our pelvis doesn't stay square. We get a bit of action that way. So I'm not sure where fixing the pelvis got brought into Pilates, but when I teach it, I try and anatomically always go with what the bones should be doing. If I'm fixing my pelvis, it means I'm rotating my pelvis off my hip, which is not a great thing. So if I change feet, so you can see this hip, I can start off square. I'm going to activate here, but as I push away, it's a natural thing for this hip, when you get to the end of range, to open a teeny bit. And actually, I'm more worried if the hip goes the other way, because hip extension goes with external rotation. And external rotation, the muscles take the pelvis into what we call a posterior tilt. And that would be a little bit of opening the hip. The hip that's flexed in front goes with a little bit of the opposite. So it's not actually wrong. If I do that, I'm really kind of forcing this sacroiliac back, and it might actually give you a bit of sacroiliac pain. So it's actually normal to have just a teeny bit of opening and rotation and coming back in. And like I say, that might not be what the Pilates teacher that you have teaches, but anyone, physios out there as well, will probably agree with actually just the slightest amount of movement at the end of range is not a bad thing. So that is a hip flexor stretch, kneeling. Now we can do this with a leg in the air so that we're not kneeling. I have reformers that are lower down, which I tend to use for this there, but if you don't have that, then you can stand on the side of the reformer and you can have your knee hovered off. So if you have kneecap issues, and actually this as an exercise on its own without actually taking it into a big stretch or a big lunge, is quite a nice exercise for pushing that leg back. So again, I'm in a position where actually I'm having to activate my arm and brace through there, and I'm just pushing that leg back and coming in. My bottom leg isn't doing anything at the moment, so I'm having to learn to extend my hip. What I want to watch is that I don't lose control in my back, so I've still got some abdominal control through here as I push that leg back, and that is a nice hip extension exercise. Or I can add on more of an opening of the hip, and as I push back I can bend the other leg and I can extend and I come back in. So that's another version that you can do, which is easier, slightly easier if your reformers are a bit lower. So if you've got a home reformer, they probably will be. And then you can avoid kneeling on the kneecap. So hip flexor opening, hip flexor stretch, coming from an exercise called front splits. Like I said, it's not the original, but it's a version that is maybe more doable and helpful for somebody with hypermobility. So it's Bonnie Southgate, hEDS Rehab. I hope that you found this video useful, and I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe, leave comments, and have a great day.